Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. You'd be surprised at the number of crazy customers, Karens, our OP has come across while running his business. More info right after a short pause. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Price, quality, time. You may pick two. Many years ago, decades even, I made fine furniture for a living in my own shop. I specialized in historical reproductions. My work was good enough to even end up in several museums as reproduction pieces only. Understandably, originals can be quite rare. My work also featured in several movies. On one memorable occasion, I even discovered a piece I'd made for sale in an antique shop. Someone had taken care to age it, and it was being offered as an original. The staff were less than impressed when I pointed out it was a modern reproduction and showed them my maker's brand hidden on the underside. I was asked to leave and never come back. Oh well, I'm quite flattered though. So now that you understand the type of work I produced, you should also understand some of the types of customers it attracted. After being burned a couple of times, I had a sale contract written up by my solicitor. In essence, it was an agreement for the customer to sign off on the agreed design drawings and pay 50% upfront, non-refundable, once work commences, to cover costs and the remaining 50% upon completion but before delivery. One of the earliest CBs was an individual who proudly claimed he never paid full price for anything. He ordered a rather nice table made, signed the contract, and paid the required 50%. However, upon completion, he informed me that he decided the total price was too much and he'd only be paying the original deposit. I reminded him that he had signed a contract and as a result, the table would remain in my possession until fully paid for. He then tried to get me to deliver it, and he would have a check waiting. Yeah, right, not falling for that one. After a 3-month standoff, he finally paid the remainder when I told him I was now putting the table up for sale elsewhere to recover costs. Another common CB was the my father/brother/uncle can make that for half the cost. I would just reply, okay, so why aren't they? One CB even went so far as to have her father come into my workshop to copy the templates I use. He was firmly told that was not happening. Similar to the above is the I can go down to Wally Mart and buy that for half the price. Well, no you can't actually. The only place these designs exist in the world is in my shop. But hey, go have fun looking. Next was the type of CB who could never be satisfied. One Karen in particular comes to mind. She would hunt for anything that she considered a defect, as she put it, and demanded a price reduction or something else extra free. The final straw came when I caught her pulling her car key across a polished tabletop to produce a scratch, for which she then predictably demanded a discount. She was quite upset that I caught her red-handed and was even more upset when she was kicked out and banned from the premises. Lastly, there were the negotiators who always wanted a better price or to jump the waiting list or perhaps some free extras added to their work. I would direct them to the sign on the wall which simply said time, quality, cost. You may choose only two. Most of them eventually worked it out. I'd like to say these were not common, but on average, I would encounter at least one each week. Unfortunately, my countrymen were the worst for this. Short arms and deep pockets, as the saying goes. I loved dealing with the Americans, though. Even after shipping, they still thought my prices were cheap. Likewise, the Europeans very much appreciated quality work, although shipping to Europe was a pain. Eventually, I moved to the tropics where the humidity's no good for fine woodwork, and so closed my doors. While I miss the woodwork, I'll never miss the choosing beggars. And our second story. Customer loses beer and freedom over uninterested woman. Being a retail manager for a retail drugstore chain, Friday nights are very busy. Everyone's excited for the weekend and alcohol sales are up. Starts off as a typical Friday night until a man we'll call Ken walks in. Ken's making his way to the cooler to buy a 6-pack of Corona beer. Glass. On his way there, he decides to hit up on a woman and ask for her number. We'll call her Jane. Jane's boyfriend, we'll call him John, immediately confronted Ken and told Ken that Jane is his girlfriend. To get the full picture, Jane had a stroller with a baby in it. John's a large guy with tattoos for eyebrows and several extreme piercings. Both parties go their separate ways until checkout. Ken's in front of John and Jane and tries again to ask Jane for her number. John, in a tougher, firmer voice, again confronts Ken to leave his girlfriend alone. After Ken pays for his beer, he decides to wait outside and again asks Jane for her number. John's now mad and grabs Ken's beer and slams it against a concrete pillar outside the store. Glass breaks and there's a large puddle of beer. John then says, "Next time, that's your head," and leaves with Jane. Well, that was only the start of the crazy night with Ken. Ken asked for a manager and asked for a replacement beer. We told him that because we did not break his beer, we cannot replace his beer. We offered to call the police so he could report the assault and loss. Ken tried to make a case that the store would get a lot of bad publicity with the police and being on the news, so it'd be cheaper and less stressful if we just give him another beer. We kept saying no multiple times. Then Ken started a tantrum. He started punching the concrete poles, throwing whatever he could get his hands on, even toppling his trash cans. I called the police not once, but twice. Unfortunately, it took the police half an hour to get to the store. During that half hour, Ken's harassing customers and throwing his tantrum. Luckily, the other manager who was on duty with me was large and burly and offered to escort customers to their cars. At one point, Ken even tries to grab the manager's leg like a little kid begging for a beer. When the police finally arrive, Ken's throwing his shoes and picks up a piece of broken glass, looking like he's ready to charge. That's when the police draw their guns and order his hands up and him on the ground. The police tell me what they witnessed is enough for them to arrest him, but take my statement for good measure. Had Ken just listened to John's first warning, he'd be home alone enjoying some beer. Instead, he spent the night in jail alone and no beer. And if this doesn't prove the saying, play stupid games, win stupid prizes, I don't know what does. And our next story. Random crazy stranger threatens me. As I was doing my job for the night, a guy comes into my store and straight out of nowhere calls me a slag. It was completely unexpected from someone who I never met. I first gave him the benefit of the doubt and politely asked him what that was about. Immediately, the man got really defensive and agitated. "What, am I shoplifting or something? What's your problem?" he shouted back at me. Another response I wasn't expecting. Clearly, he took it the wrong way. I told him to calm down, but before I could ask him if there was something wrong, "F off, I'm not calming down. What have I done wrong?" he yells back at me, along with several other name-calling. That was it. I wasn't going to tolerate that kind of behavior and told him to leave the store. He then demanded my name and threatened to report me to head office. "What's your problem?" he shouts. "You're my problem. Leave the store now," I responded. "You got a serious attitude problem, and I'll tell you, if this is your attitude, you will live a bad life," he tells me. He also said he was going to call the police for my attitude? It didn't faze me since I had my coworkers, customers, and cameras backing me up. It was an empty threat. "All right then, have a nice evening," I tell him as he begins to leave. He comes back to me and threatens me by saying, "Do you want to take this outside?" "Huh? I'll be out there and I will knock you out." I took my glasses off and was expecting him to climb over the counter and try fighting me. He took a few steps towards me but stopped outside my arm's reach. I stood my ground and was ready for him. I've been down this road before. This man was a short spaghetti-armed loser who looks like he's never trained or been in a real fight. Any response was going to escalate the situation. I wanted him out. Even though I could have wittingly said what was his excuse and why was he missing a few teeth, I opted to not say anything and stared him down, waiting and ready for his first swing at me. But he slowly backed off. My coworker told him to leave or police is coming. He shouts one last final abuse at me, calling me a queer and still insisting I have a terrible attitude before storming out of the store. A few minutes later, after I clocked out and walked outside, he ran away and was long gone. All bark and no bite. I ended up getting a free packet of crisps. We have a policy that we do not tolerate abuse or disgusting behavior in our store. The moment someone swears at us, they're out. Anyone getting violent or threatening is a big no-no. They're banned forever. I'm lucky to have bosses who said that I'm not paid to take abuse or crap from anyone. If it does come down to blows, you defend yourself. The loudest ones are the ones who have something to cover up. And our last story. Want to take the nature preserve area behind my house? Tear it down and build a community clubhouse. Okay. Long story short, our community is fairly new, less than 2 years old. The developer recently handed over control to the homeowners. Everything went well at first until our president sold her house and moved to be replaced by an absolute C-word of the highest order. She would walk around weekly and do inspections. One singular weed in front of a planter bed, written warning. Grass 0.5 inches too high, written warning. You get the idea. Anyway, at a recent HOA meeting, she brought up some ridiculous ideas that the community heavily opposed. For example, she wanted to take the nature preserve area behind my house, tear it down, and build a community clubhouse. She also wanted to have a community pool installed, among a long list of other crap. When my neighbor asked how the community could afford all this, she said, and I quote, "Everyone that lives here is rich and can afford the increase in dues." That resulted in a shouting match, and the meeting was adjourned soon after. We got so fed up with it that we submitted a recall petition that was signed by nearly everyone. There was to be a special meeting to validate the results. However, I just got an email stating that she and the rest of the board had resigned. The leaders of the recall petition are going to take over control. All they want is to keep the common areas landscaped and more or less leave us all alone. Huge win for everyone involved. Everyone that lives here is rich and can afford the increase in dues. Translated, F you kids and families, I want you out because I'm an entitled B-word. Good job on the association to kick her off the board. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.